What's going on, everybody? It's another episode of the Rockets Collective, episode 3, I believe. And man, it's been really fun doing this. Again, great group of guys. I know it's going by quick. We got Kelly Eco, Ali Kambajani, you got my boy Will. And if you guys are just tuning in and you haven't subscribed yet, definitely make sure to tap in. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers. So we definitely want to hit that milestone. And the Rockets they made some good splashes in the free agency yesterday. So of course we want to hear your opinion. Make sure to leave a comment. Let us know what you think. But yeah, we're gonna dive right into it. I mean, the Rockets got Dorian Finney-Smith, 4 years, $53 million. They also got Clint Capela, 3 years, $21 million. Let's start with Dorian Finney-Smith. I thought that was a great acquisition. Another 3-and-D wing, 6'7", 7-foot wingspan, 41.1% from three on 5 attempts a night. And he can really protect the rim too. This brother, he can ball. So I'm gonna kick it off to one of y'all and see what y'all think about the signing.
Yeah, so I think it was kind of in line with how they've been doing business lately. Like they want to make quick work of everything. And right at the start of free agency, they obviously wanted to meet with Dorian, Luke Kennard, Nikhil, those kind of players, and kind of lay out the groundwork of what they felt was a good offer. So I think getting Dorian agreed within the first hour, I think, of free agency. I think it was just spoke to how
real quick.
Yeah, it spoke to how aggressive they've been over the last few weeks. And I think, ever since the KD trade, announcement in terms of that news broke, you kind of sense that these guys understand the importance of the situation right now and trying to move quicker to keep what they think is a championship contending core together. So I think
did we lose him?
Oh, I thought it was me. My guy lagged out. He did fix the mic though. Oh, he's back. Okay, here we go. Kelly. Lagging. Brother's lagging.
I'll pick up the baton.
Yeah, go ahead.
For Kelly. Kelly, I don't know if you can hear us, but you are lagging right now. One, shout out to the chat. Y'all boys come in here ready with the questions, man.
Facts, they do. I see.
Game ain't even been up but 30 seconds. Kelly, are you back? You hear us now?
We'll go ahead and take it, twin. That's all.
Okay, cool. Cool. The DFS signing. Like I said, I talked about a couple on the podcast we're gonna drop today, and then obviously in the playback room. I wanted the Rockets to target some level of a guard in free agency. That was kind of my biggest want, was to bring in somebody to somewhat supplant the shot creation that we lost in Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks, and then also I think Dillon Brooks is a very underrated defender for our Rockets team. So I wanted to kind of bring in someone who could preferably guard at that guard position for us. That's why we talked a lot about the unrealistic sign and trade for like Quentin Grimes, right? Because he just does the best of both worlds. DFS is not a guard. He's a wing. But the reason why I like the DFS signing, even though he's not a wing, is because, even though he's not a guard, is because he is like the definition of the 3-and-D prototypical wing that every NBA team covets. Like the archetype that NBA front offices are like, we need this kind of guy on our roster. It looks like Dorian Finney-Smith. And just to kind of give you guys who don't know what his game is like, he's a guy who shot 41% from three last year on 5 attempts per game, which is really freaking good. Like league average is about 38% from three. So he's in like that lower 40s percent, which is like insane. And then he's not necessarily the same level of a POA defender as like a Min or Tari, because those guys are like all defensive caliber POA guys. But he is still a very switchable defender on the perimeter in his own right. And then where he's really good at, where he is like one of the better guys in the league at, is his rim protection and being able to be one of the better one of the better non-big rim protectors in the league, right? He's really good at that. And so you're bringing that guy over to the Rockets, and you're adding him to an already very deep wing room that constitutes of Amin, Tari, Bari. Kevin Durant counts as a wing technically, and he's a pretty underrated defender in his own right. So you're bringing in Dorian Finney-Smith into an already like really stacked wing room that kind of makes its bread and butter on the defensive end. And it's really cool because this is the first time in Dorian Finney-Smith's career where he's not the best defender on his team. You look at the Lakers last season, he was the only defender on that team, right? They were playing him at the center a lot of times post Anthony Davis trade. And so now he's come to a situation where he can just fit in. He doesn't have to be the only guy defensively. I said it earlier, like on the right day, this guy might be the 4th or 5th best defender on the team. Like on the right day, he might be that low. That says a lot because I think he's really good. And then I'll just land my plane by saying I think that the on-off numbers really represent how good he was for the Lakers last season. They were, I don't have it in front of me, but they were a lot better, let's put it like that, when he was on the court than with him off of it. And I saw the stat earlier today. I don't have an exact number, but basically the Lakers were hovering like slightly above 500. I think they were like 3 games above 500 before they traded for DFS. They were several games above it after like that. When they went on that run last year, it was post DFS trade. And so, yeah, I think that you're bringing in a guy like that to not just be like your only defender. He's just fitting in. I think it's just going to make him even better, to make the team even better. So I like the signing. I don't know if Kelly's back. He can.
Yeah, I think we have Kelly back.
Yo, I'm back. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're back to you.
My fault, y'all. So yeah, the crux of what I was saying is that the timing of this deal kind of spoke to the level of alertness from the Rockets front office and where they kind of see themselves, in the whole parity of the NBA. A lot of teams obviously think that because they've been 7 champions in the last 7 years, that every team has a shot, but just how quickly over the last few weeks that they've done business, like re-signing Ime, bringing Fred, Steven back, then you bring back Jay Sean, Jeff, Aaron, you re-sign Jabari. Now you bring in Kevin Durant and you bring in Dorian Finney-Smith, and then obviously Capela will get to in a little bit. But just the aggression and the speed of which they've made these moves, it really speaks to where they see themselves in the NBA hierarchy. So I think they've done some great business early on, and I think it should only improve, as the days get on.
Yeah, the Rockets are just doubling down on going bigger, and not just from a double big perspective, but just having jumbo-sized wings. Now, there's been conversation about, is Dorian Finney-Smith going to replace Dillon Brooks? I think in a way, yes. But what Dorian Finney-Smith does that I think Dillon Brooks was underappreciated for is defending bigger wings and bigs, especially late in games. You saw a perfect example people remember the most is Dillon Brooks was primary defender. Yeah. And you're going to see that with Dorian Finney-Smith. He is not as good against guards as he is against bigger wings and just kind of smaller size bigs in general. Think of the Western Conference, those top teams right now who you're going to have to face against. DFS can go against Kawhi, can go against Julius Randle. You can put him against Aaron Gordon. He's a guy who can take on a lot of those different bodies defensively. And so I think from that perspective, it's something big for them because, he can switch 1 through 4, but then also he's a guy late games. If you're counting on him one-on-one, switched on against a wing, he can do that. So I think that's one thing. And I think another thing with Dorian Finney-Smith is his shooting. If you put him last year in this Rockets offense, he'd be already the best corner 3-point shooter on the team. And that's important. The Rockets have lacked a good threat from the corners. They've tried to get Tari to become that. They've tried to get Jabari to become that. But now you have a guy who's 32 years old. The last few seasons, not just last season where he shot a career high from 3, but the last few seasons, he's been shooting a lot of catch and shoot, spot up from the corner threes. He automatically kind of takes on that type of role. And a type of kind of comparison I want to make, not saying it's the exact same thing, but this offseason really reminds me of when the Rockets went out and traded for Chris Paul and then brought in PJ Tucker with that mid-level exception. Like I said, it's not the same thing, but I think there are commonalities there where, as Kelly mentioned, over a span of a few weeks, 2016, 2017, Rockets finished first, lost to the Spurs in the second round, come back, trade for Chris Paul, PJ Tucker, Luc Mbah a Moute, rounded out their roster with a doubling down with the style of play they wanted to do. Follow us forward till now. You get Kevin Durant, who solves one of your problems late in the game. Then you bring in Dorian Finney-Smith. You have Clint Capela allowing you to double down on the double big lineup, which, by the way, we'll get into. I think Ime Udoka is channeling his Boston Celtics days in. And you're putting together a team that's doubling down on what you were successful from last year. So I think there are a lot of parallels there that we'll have to see how it plays out over the rest of the summer and going into the season.
Yeah, this team, early in the rebuild, we all complain like these Rockets have no identity. And now they have a very clear identity that they're going to lock up and get every single rebound. And I think DFS is a great acquisition. The Rockets have a ton of lengthy power forwards and small forwards. And he literally just adds to that. Will brought it up. One of the best non-big rim protectors in the league. Players shot 7% below their expected field goal percentage when DFS was contesting the shot. That's top 10 in the league. And Kevin Durant as well, top 10 in that stat. Amin Thompson, third in that stat. And you bring in 2 of those top 3 people in that stat, and we just locking up. We locking up 1 through 5. That's what the Rockets are going to do, and that's what Ime Udoka wants. So I thought it was a great acquisition, right below the MLE value at 13.25 average annual value. So, man, I thought that was a steal. And I know off the rip, everyone was like, okay, yeah, we need a guard. Why are we looking at Dorian Finney-Smith? And I'm sure we're all jump into, the Rockets roster right now. They don't really have a shooting guard. But, man, you get Dorian Finney-Smith, and I like the analogy that Ali Khan made. Yeah, PJ Tucker, you're getting guys to kind of round out your team, guys who fit the mold extremely well. He's going to play a key part on this Rockets team. And I wanted to ask you guys before we move on, if I could find the comment. Yeah, let's use Avery's. Yeah, will DFS start? Will and I just kind of talked about this on our podcast. But as of right now, everyone is looking at Jabari to start. I think DFS is a good option too. But I'm curious to see what y'all's thoughts are on actually that topic. I know.
I'll go first.
Jabari got a go first. That pays him starter money. So I would have to lean towards Jabari. Now, that being said, I think you could make the argument that DFS could start as well, just with how he shapes out that starting unit. But honestly, I think it's going to come down to when the season starts, how comfortable Ime Udoka feels with that starting group in the half court. Do you have enough shot creation on the floor to where you can start Jabari? Has Jabari gotten better at that? Where you feel comfortable with him attacking closeouts? Similar to a good comparison for Jabari that I like to make is look at Cam Johnson's career. Now Cam Johnson's an elite shooter, and Jabari has still is working on his way to get there. But Cam Johnson was not a good attack the closeout, handle the basketball in certain sets, and do these things. He's developed that over time. If Jabari can play in that type of system where the Rockets are going to play quick, that's another reason they got Clint Capela to play faster in the half court. If you're going to play quicker in the half court, attack and transition, you need a guy who can dribble, pull up, hit the shot, make quick decisions. If Jabari can do that, and he's showing that over the summer, I think he'll start. If not, then a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith, who's played in multiple different fast-paced offenses in Brooklyn with the Lakers, had going back to his time in Dallas with the Mavericks. I think it's a pick your poison kind of thing. But I would lean right now towards Jabari. Kelly, what do you think?
I think, I would too. I think for Ime also, you kind of have to think, is it more important for him to see the closing group? Because if you go back to their length and their size, you could end games with a lineup that's like Amin, Jabari, Dorian, KD, and take your pick.
Tar.
It could be Tar.
Yeah.
And you just have, 5 guys that can, like 7-foot wingspans or damn near 7-foot wingspans that can guard multiple positions, and it just gives you such optionality. So I do think, because Jabari is such an Ime guy, maybe you think that he should be able to keep his spot. But I will say that training camp is going to be quite competitive. These are guys that are coming in now with something to prove. And I think, anytime you have a team that has a mixture of this like 2 timeline approach with like the young guys coming up, the experienced guys that maybe still have things to prove, chip on their shoulders, you make for a very competitive environment. I think one thing that Ime has built in the last 2 years is competitive nature, in terms of you want guys to fight for each other, but also you want guys that aren't afraid to fight each other in terms of that spirit. So I do think that whatever happens, if Jabari starts, like if Dorian comes in games, they are set for success because they can do so many things differently depending on how the game is going.
It's true. Will, what would you say? We just talked about this on the pod, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I think Kelly is pretty spot on with it being a training camp kind of thing, because I think you have about 3 guys who could really start on this team in that last spot. So obviously, I think Amin's going to start. I think Fred's going to start. I think Shingo's going to start. And then, obviously, Kevin Durant's going to start. So I think you have 4 guys who are shoe-in starters. It's that 5th spot that's kind of up for grabs. And I think Jabari Smith Jr. coming off the extension, he's someone who started for this team in the past. I think he's obviously in that mix. I think that Tari Eason is someone who I think people kind of forget was actually ahead of Jabari in the depth chart in the latter half of the season when Jabari came back from injury come playoff time. Tari Eason was actually getting more minutes. There was a couple of games where they had the option to start one of Jabari or Tari, and they opted to start Tari. And I think Brad said we were like 12-1 during that stretch.
Yeah, and they were 12-0 for a minute when he was starting. Yeah.
So Tari was starting on this team. Not just was he starting, like we were having some real success with Tari starting. And like I said, Ime did. That was a situation where Ime had the opportunity to start both Tari or start one of Tari or Bari, and decided to start Tari over Bari. So I think he's still in the mix. And then obviously DFS is in that mix, in my opinion, because he does something that I think both Tari and Bari don't do, which is he shoots the ball at a 40% clip, which, like, once again, I don't think people understand how, like, that's crazy. Like 41% from three on that volume, that's real shooting. That's, like Ali Khan pointed out, that's the best corner shooter in this team last year. He's probably not even the best, probably he is the best shooter if he was on the team last year. So having a guy like that who can be in the starting lineup, provide that spacing, and then you also would still have that dog defensively, someone who's versatile, someone who can kind of have Kevin Durant's back on the perimeter and guarding those lengthier wings, like Ali Khan pointed out. I think he is probably the best person we have in terms of throwing a body like Victor Wembanyama next season. And so I think things like that will take into consideration into training camp in terms of who they'll go with. But as of today, bro, I have no idea. Except there's three guys who I think could all legitimately make a real case for that final starting spot.
Yeah, it'll be a good battle for sure. Dorian Finney-Smith, of course, is a really good insertion into that starting lineup. Jabari is probably going to start off. We'll see what happens in training camp. I could see Jabari really thriving in that bench role. Again, Houston was excellent down the stretch when Jabari was coming off the bench, and he was able to get to his shot a lot more off the bench. He was kind of focused on a little more. Get to his spot, short corner, a little post fade. He won't probably get those opportunities too much if he's starting next to KD. But I'm totally cool with the brother starting right now. Again, perfect for what the Rockets are doing right now. But yeah, let's dive into Clint Capela. Again, that shocks me. That trade, I thought it was fake. I was driving, I got the notification. I was all right, yeah, come on, bro. Who got hacked? But it happened. And I saw Will's tweet too. He was surprised. I talked to Kelly. He was surprised. I'm sure Ali Khan was surprised too. But man, what y'all think about that trade? That was something. Oh, not that trade, but this is the signing.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming at all. But I mean, it does make sense. Like if you spent the better part of last season trying to manage Steven Adams' health, and if you look at all these older guys, it's clear that once you get to the All-Star break, most of these vets are in self-preservation mode for the playoffs, right? So if there's a way where you can keep Steven fresh and not overwork him, from November to April, you bring in a guy like Clint who's been here before. He is at his best. He was a lob threat, a rim protection, rebounding prowess. He gives them a different angle in terms of just the verticality spacing that he's provided in the past. And you just have that as an option if you want to go to. Like, I think the biggest thing that they've done for Ime is just giving him more tools in his work kit in terms of what you want to do depending on the game, the situation, the matchup. And the Capela, it was a shock because I didn't see that coming at all. But the more you think about it, it certainly makes sense. Going back to what Ali Khan said, is embracing that mentality of that big front line, controlling the tempo, controlling the offensive glass, and giving yourself extra cracks at a half court offense, which should be better. Adding a Kevin Durant and a Dorian Finney-Smith.
I wanted to bring up Ime Udoka in Boston. I think this is a good way for Rockets fans to understand this double big thing. Yes, it was super successful from an offensive rebounding perspective with Şengün and Adams, but there's a reason why Ime wants to do it. He wanted to do this his first season here. He didn't have the ability from a roster construction wise to do that. Right. He didn't have the personnel for it. Now he does. And so what he did in Boston with Rob Williams and Al Horford, you had Rob. Let's start with defensively. You had Rob as the guy who was the roamer, low weak side, not necessarily on the ball. He would rotate on those drives. He would contest the lobs. He would protect the rim. He would be able to kind of enter the paint near the basket and kind of deter shots or force a pass out. And that's when the Celtics had Marcus Smart. You had Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, those bigger defenders get in the passing lanes and try to force turnovers and steals, which Boston was one of the league leaders in his time there. Then you had Al Horford. Well, he's the guy you're going to put on the traditional big to defend. Then he's also going to be the guy that, because he's on the traditional big, you can force that switch and put him on a small. Similar to Alperen Şengün, in that Alperen is really good near the perimeter when he's hedging, when he's showing his hands, when he's forcing a ball handler to retreat away from the rim or towards the sideline. Those are things that are Alperen Şengün's strengths. So if you look at it from that perspective, it makes sense to me. Now, what I think is a key thing with Clint Capela, he's not the same guy he was in Houston. When he was in Houston, and then, for example, let's look at Nikola Jokic. When the Rockets would play the Nuggets, Clint would outrun Jokic on every transition opportunity.
He was the Joker stopper for years.
They never lost to Denver. When
he was the Joker stopper when he was here.
And he is not the Joker stopper anymore. Yeah. So I want to make that point clear. We're not bringing him in to stop Jokic. That's not why he's here. He's here for a few reasons. Number one, as Kelly mentioned, brings you a different dimension, a different tool. And I think offensively, what he does is the way that Kevin Durant was successful in Brooklyn, even in Golden State. You saw some of that in Phoenix. He likes to run a lot of 21 action, delay action, where they're playing 5 out. And he's either the ball handler initiator or he has the ball at the top of the key. Why is that important? Because Clint, when he was successful in Houston or even with Trae Young in Atlanta, those offenses used to also play pistol action 21 series. I think you bring in a guy like Clint who doesn't need to be fast in transition, but at least is somebody who can provide you with that lob threat, is quick in the half court, and can allow you to play that quicker style in transition like the Rockets want. Rockets were not happy with the percentage of their shots that they got early in the shot clock last season. And that was a big point of emphasis. Even Kelly mentioned that on last week's show. That is one of the major reasons that Clint Capela is here, because he is somebody you can have in that kind of early transition offense to set a screen, roll to the rim, and make it easier on some of those unproven guards you're going to give a lot more playing time to, like Reed Shepherd, Amen Thompson, to be able to have easier opportunities to create. So depending on the defensive game plan from the opposing team, you have a big who can open up the floor for you and do some different things.
I think, as all of y'all have said, that signing did kind of catch me off guard. As a matter of fact, I kind of didn't like it at first. But I started thinking about it a little bit more. And I started kind of realizing, I think, kind of the thought process behind why you would bring in Clint Capela. Number one, I think that the league is, because I think everybody here, for the most part, kind of want to get a guard, right? Like a lot of the things we talked about in the last week's episode was a lot of the guard options with the MLE. We talked about like D'Angelo Russell and like the Tyus Jones, obviously the Luke Kennards and the Gary Trent, guys like that mold. But one thing I think we are kind of noticing with the league right now is the league is kind of showing they don't really value that player that much, right? Like Colin Sexton is I was a Colin Sexton guy. I thought he was pretty good.
He's solid. He's solid.
Yeah, I thought he was somebody that I think I would have loved for the Rockets to acquire Colin Sexton before the KD trade. And you see the Jets had to give up an asset to get rid of him, which is crazy to me. I didn't think his value was ever that low, but that's where it was, right? You look at what the Blazers traded for Anthony Simons. Like they take back at a bad contract. Jrue Holiday's a good player, but he's making, I think, 35, upwards of 35, 37 million dollars for the next 2-3 years. So like they took back a bad contract, and honestly, a player who doesn't even want to be there for Anthony Simons. Jordan Poole got moved for kind of a lot of nothing. Jordan Clarkson got bought out. Like the league is kind of saying we don't really value these type of guys. Who they do value is they value the Dorian Finney-Smiths, guys like that. They value the high impact guys who can come out there and impact the game in small doses. I think Clint Capela, even though he's not the same player that the Rockets traded away 5 years ago, his athleticism is not the same. I think he had like a really bad injury that kind of kept him out for a period of time. He's not the same player, but he can still go out there and get you rebounds. He can still go out there and protect the rim. He can still go out there and grab a lob. And I think when he's in a position now where he's no longer the starting center, even like a backup center, he's not your third string guy. So he doesn't have to, he's not tired because he's running up down the court the entire game. He's on there for like 10 minutes, at the most probably, And I think that if you're a contending team that's trying to go deep in the postseason, depth is never going to be a bad thing. And having that fallback option, not just to like load manage you guys throughout the regular season. So, Steve Nash doesn't play every single night, but God forbid one of our bigs get hurt. we're not in a situation where it's like, oh, we're out of luck. Like, you have another body out there who you do feel comfortable that you can throw out there into the playoffs. And then the last thing, and I think this is like one of the biggest things, is Clint Capela is tradable salary at the deadline. That's, you know what I'm saying, that's $7 million they can play around with. And maybe, you know, I don't know what the Rockets are going to look like at the deadline, or where they're going to be looking to target, if they do target anything at the deadline. But we're seeing also right now, like, we're Rockets fans, we understand how important it is to have tradable salary that you're okay moving off of, right? Because you don't want to trade, you know, your starting five. You don't want to trade your young guys. You don't want to trade Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams. So you have to give up salary to go out there and get something. Not Dorian Finney-Smith, although I guess he technically could be that salary if, you know, you depending on who you get. But Clint Capela is that salary, right? He's someone who can be that salary in those type of trades. So I think just the Rockets' decision to just quadruple down on what they're good at, instead of trying to like Band-Aid solution the guard problem, I think it's a pretty smart idea. I can get behind it.
Yeah, I was gonna say really quickly. Again, we appreciate everyone for tuning in. We got 180 in here. If you haven't subscribed yet, definitely make sure to. We got some love for Ali Khan that wanted to show. They said Ali Khan showing out. Got some honor. I see you. And Mitty, I'll get to your jersey on another day. I got you. But
Kelly
I wanted
got
to
that
say,
aura, man. Kelly got that aura.
Oh,
Kelly got that
aura.
trade machine aura. You know what I mean? He got that trade machine aura.
for sure. But no, again, we appreciate y'all, of course, for tuning in. I wanted to definitely say about Clint Capela. They, like, starting on the first day of the season, the Rockets had the best center depth, best center lineup in the entire league. You replace, I really thought it was really solid, but you replace Landale with Clint Capela, who, again, they tripled down on what they were good at. Clint is still an amazing offensive rebounder. He's an amazing rebounder. Again, 7'5" wingspan. He really fits into what the Rockets want to do. And you can run that double big lineup. The Rockets were not running double big with Landale out there. You know, when Steve-O's not playing, it's like, okay, we're not going to run double big. Yeah. But hey, with Clint out there, we can run that double big for sure. And Ali Khan, I love that you brought up the actions that were ran with Clint Capela and how it can still really work with the Ime Udoka-led offense. So yeah, I really love the Clint signing. And as we know, Steven Adams is not going out there playing 82 games, and he's not going to be playing those high minutes that we saw against the Warriors every single night. So in the nights that Steve-O is not out there, Clint is a great guy to have as a backup option. Yeah. And that's a really important to have in the West that is, yes, very stacked. And now with, you know, the Nuggets making some really good moves, OKC, we could probably assume will be one. It's going to be important to see where you're seated at if you want to make a run for a contention. You know, you want to get the right matchups and you want to have a high seed, and having depth is a great way to do that. So, yeah, Clint, for all the points made just now, is an amazing pickup. So
I think one other thing we need to mention with Clint is how Jabari plays a significant role in this, because Jabari is also a 5 as a small ball player. You have Dorian Finney-Smith who can play that role if you need to, but Jabari played the 5 last year. Ime Udoka likes to play him at the 5. I think when we think of the Rockets having 3 centers, I think you should call it 3.5, because Jabari will still play at the 5, and he can also play with Clint. He can play with Steven Adams. He can play with Şengün. They could change the lineups that way. And one more thing with Clint as well, as it relates to Kevin Durant. There's some photos of Kevin Durant that came out today. All right, he's dude's working out in the sand. All right, looking like he's ready to go for the season. The one thing I want to mention, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, and I think people are seeing it online in his photos. When Kevin Durant played in Golden State, for example, he was a lot bigger. He had a lot more weight because he was playing that kind of playing forward role. He was playing that weak side rim protector, right? He was playing more as a rebounder. We saw him gain weight in terms of strength in Golden State. If you look at him, I feel like he looks like Golden State KD right now in some of those pictures where he's added on more upper body strength and stuff like that. So I think that's important, and it kind of just shows you that the Rockets will just play bigger and expect to dominate teams with their front court. Now, but that goes into the backcourt. Brad, I'm going to steal your thunder here. I gotta ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Yo,
we got all this comments going on in the chat. We have all this, all these guys in the front court who look really good.
Yeah,
I got a backcourt question for you. You have Amen, you got Fred, you got Reed, you got Aaron Holiday, who you broke the news that he's coming back on a deal. You also got somebody by the name of Cam Whitmore.
Yeah.
What's going on with Cam? You had something in your story today. Just curious, what's happening with Cam, and is he somebody who the Rockets can count on to score the basketball and be a part of this roster in the fall?
So I think the whole Cam situation is complex. Obviously, if you zoom out, the Rockets still view him as a talented young player. And there's a reason why, when teams were calling on draft night, trying to offer picks to get Cam, there's a reason why there was no deal that the Rockets found that they liked, right? This is a guy that they rate very highly, and they know what he can be. For whatever reason, over the last 2 seasons, it hasn't clicked, consistently, and that's why he's been at the end of the rotation, right? So when you're in that position as a young player, 20 years old, and you see now a team bring in three guys in the offseason that are going to probably play above you in the rotation, you're not going to be happy with that, right? Like, as a young player, you want to develop, you want to play. So the Rockets are in a situation where they never feel pressure in terms of trying to trade somebody, but they'll take calls, they'll work with you and your representation to find a solution. But if one doesn't come they don't like, you're still under contract. So the thing with Cam is, if you find a solution elsewhere, fantastic for you. But if not, how can you still be a useful piece to this team? Because if you look at it on paper, he's probably one of the only true shooting guards that they have left. Like, this is a guy that should be a plug and play type off the bench, but this is a 12 man, maybe even 13, as they can argue in terms of their depth. So how do you figure out how to be a good teammate to everyone else? How are you going to be pleased with, not, getting DNPs some nights? Maybe you get 5 minutes another night. You might get garbage time another night. If you're still here, because these trade things can be tricky. They can take weeks, can take months. You never know. Like, even the KD thing, the Suns were shopping KD as early as January, and he just now got traded. So these things are not an exact science, but I do believe that the Rockets know what they have in Cam, and it's up to Cam, as has always been the case, to figure out what the best solution is for himself internally. And I think understanding what the team concept is, understanding how you can impact winning, I think that will do him a lot of good. Because if you were to just dial it down and hone into the team concept, this team could be playing deep into May and June. Like, they're that deep where, injuries notwithstanding, they could go on a serious run here. And if you are part of that team, providing spacing, athleticism, because if you think, like, athletes wise, if you look at a man, he's probably the best athlete on the roster. Number 2 is probably Cam, like, without a doubt. And I think the biggest thing for him is just understanding his importance, and you're going to have a very long NBA career. So I understand that right now you might be frustrated with the lack of playing time and your spot in the rotation, but I wouldn't think it's a death sentence. I think there are things that you can do to improve that standing. Training camp is always going to be there. If you ball out and you make the coaching staff, you put them under pressure to make decisions, you will get on the court. But, these things are tricky situations.
I want to hear, Alikhan, you asked the question. I want to hear your thoughts on what the Rockets should do with Cam. I mean, yeah, his skill set, Kelly mentioned that he's one of the only guys that could kind of run the 2 per se. His issue for me, very low assist percentage, very tunnel vision, gets lost off ball defensively. And again, this kid isn't even 21 yet. He's still 20. He has all the talent in the world. We see it in spurts for sure. And we saw in the Lakers game, he dropped a quick 30. But what do you think about, Cam? The issue is he has to buy into a role. And Ime in the post-game press, he was like, hey, like, we talked to Cam about this a multitude of times, and it's just not clicking. But we'll see what happens next year. And it's looking like it might not even happen this upcoming year. But what would you do? Would you try to keep Cam? You think he can, buy into this role of what the Rockets have going?
You have, I mentioned those 5 guys, right, who are like your backcourt. You got Fred, Amen, Reed, Aaron Holiday, and Cam Whitmore. How many of those 3 would you consider smaller guards?
Just Reed and Fred.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aaron to a certain
too.
extent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those three. Yeah.
So that means 3 of your 5 already are considered smaller guards.
Right.
Then on top of that, Cam Whitmore and Amen are both taller. Amen's 6'7". Cam is also 6'7". He has good size and strength. I mean, the way that Ime emphasizes switching, Cam ideally has the frame to be able to be a good switch defender. Right. He is one of your very few players who can actually create in isolation. He's comfortable in transition. He's somebody who, if he plays like the right way, like Kelly said, can be somebody who's really effective for you on that second side or weak side offensively, where you're running secondary actions and getting him shots. He's not just a cutter. He's not a lob threat who you can put to the side. He has the potential to be one of those secondary ball handlers. Like I said, attack late in the shot clock, go from there. Yes, he's raw, but he has all that potential to be 20-plus points per game scorer, in my mind, because it's so easy and effortless for him to score and how aggressive he is. Yeah. I'd like to keep him. I think it's worth keeping him. Now, the one thing I don't know the answer to, Brad, is what is the Rockets' timeline? Yeah, they have 2 separate timelines here. You gave Jabari an extension. You gave Şengün's extension starting. You have Reed, who you want to have a lot more playing time. You have Amen, who they think the world of. Cam, where does he fit in? Is he in that younger timeline, or is he somebody who's a bargaining chip for you to add assets to help with that veteran timeline? I don't know the answer to that, but if you're, like you said, you asked me personally, I would like to keep Cam. I just feel like Cam has to showcase that. I don't think he needs to play in Summer League. I think he just needs to show up to training camp, show that he can play in that kind of team setting and be that 6th man for them offensively, because they're going to need it. Yes, Reed is going to have plenty of opportunities to create, and he has to prove himself. The Rockets are putting a lot of, emphasis on Reed and Amen to be able to carry the load offensively. A lot. I think that's not talked about enough, honestly. I mean, it is, because people are saying we need more guard help, but what I'm trying to say is, I think if Cam shows up and he's on this team, he shows up and he shows that he can play that team first style. Not only do I think he's in a carve out playing time, I think he can be, one of their main players going into a potential playoff run.
I was going to say this really quickly, then kick it to Kelly. You brought up a good point. The Rockets, they're working with 2 timelines. You got a young core of 6 and a team that's looking like contenders at the moment. So when it comes to Cam, and Ime has been very consistent, I don't think he really cares about age. If you fit into this team, you're going to play, right? Cam Whitmore last season, again, didn't buy into the role. So if he's not buying into the role this upcoming year, I just don't think Ime Udoka necessarily cares to play him or necessarily keep him on the roster. That's just kind of what I've been seeing. Again, Amen fits perfectly. You got Tari and Jabari, perfect fits. Reed, they need that shooting. We'll see what he does next year. Cam, as you mentioned, he has the skill set to do so. He has to buy into the role. And if that's not happening, Ime sees it more so than us. He's just going to probably move on. But that's just kind of the way I'm seeing it with Cam. I'd love for him to stay a part of this team. I was ecstatic when they drafted him. Will and I, we were at Will shaking his head no. We were at the draft party. Everyone was hyped. But again, he has to buy into the role, and I think his time is actually done in Houston. But that's just what I see. Kelly, what do you think, man? Or did you? I'll cut my memories bad. Did you already ask Kelly this question?
No, I did. I guess
July, man. Everything's a haze.
Maybe I guess another way to frame it to you, Kelly, is that you have Dorian Finney-Smith, right? Like a wing. Right. You have Cam Whitmore there. Yeah. Let's say they get rid of Cam, right? That's the whole talk. Do you think that Dorian Finney-Smith was a insurance plan or another wing for just Dylan? Or did that also play a role into Cam and Tari as well? Because Jabari got an extension. Tari has not gotten an extension yet. And then also, like we just talked about, Brad mentioned, Cam Whitmore situation. So not saying Cam is the same player as them, but he is also 6'7". He is a wing as much as he is a shooting guard. How much did DFS's addition affect the timeline or perspective of Tari and Cam?
That's a great question. I think the minute that the ink dried on Ime's new extension, I think the Rockets fully committed themselves to winning now. I think over the last 2 years, Ime has shown that he's a capable coach in terms of getting those guys to understand how to win, how to improve habits, how to be, true professionals. And I think for Dorian, bringing him in, he just needs. Ime knew that he needed more floor spacers, but guys that weren't defensive liabilities. And going back to what you guys said about his shooting, it's elite. Like like if you look at him, like the eye test doesn't show you this is a knockdown sniper, but he actually is. And I think the importance that he can bring to a half court setting just by his ability to relocate off the ball and help Fred, help Alpi, help Amen as a release valve. I think regardless of if they're playing Tari or Cam, because even Tari and Cam have been streaky shooters, during their careers as well. I think Dorian is far more experienced. He understands his role to a T, and there's a reason why he was sought out by so many teams, over the last couple of years, because players that are stars in their roles end up playing a very long time. And he's 32. I think he's 32. This probably is going to be the last big contract he gets, or maybe he gets another one. But just understanding his value, I think Ime put that atop of anything else. So it's players that know what they're doing. They can come in, do the job. Don't have to work them in. You don't have to make them better defenders. You don't have to build their culture. They're already ready-made plug-and-play products. So there's a reason why he's going to play a lot on Houston this season.
I want to ask this question. We've been getting a lot of Kobe White questions, so I'll bring it up. I personally don't know what Kobe is making in the salary department, but I know Josh Landon. Was his name Josh Landon? Am I tweaking?
Jock.
Boys, it's been a night. Jock Landale, I know he's making $8 million a year. You compare that salary with Cam. I don't know what that gets you in a Kobe White discussion, but yeah, a lot of people are asking about Kobe White. So what do y'all think about Houston?
I think Kobe's making he's making 12. Yeah, it's 12 point
Okay.
something. So
Okay.
like Cam and Jock, Cam and Jock get you to Kobe. Cam and Jock get you to Kobe. So
okay. That's interesting.
Cam and Jock in a pick get you to Kobe, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, that would be something. I really like Kobe White's game. Excellent shooter. Again, just add shooters to this team and you make it work. And they have the length to take on a guy who is not the biggest guard in the world. So it works if they bring in a guy like Kobe White, especially if you move off of Cam Whitmore, who I still think has a ton of potential. I'd like them to bring in a quality player. I would hate to see them trade Cam for like 2 seconds or something like that.
No, that's crazy.
Thank you. I agree.
They won't get rid of him for that. Kelly just confirmed it, guys. For all of you comment aggregators going on Twitter right now, going to say, "Oh my God, Kelly Nico just said this."
Hey, clip this. I don't fucking know.
Said that.
Right. Yeah, they can't.
Get NBA Centel. Okay, we got to make this go there. Let's go.
Hey, Will, for you, how do you feel about the whole Cam experience? No,
he's done with it. I'll tell you.
That's why I've been quiet this whole time, man.
Go ahead.
Well, I disagree that I don't think he's a shooting guard. I think he's definitely a wing.
He's a tweener, yeah.
I don't, because he doesn't have guard skills. I feel like you kind of have to have a level of guard skills to play.
You're probably right.
That's
crazy.
No, he doesn't have guard skills. Like, I feel you got to be able to have a level of guard skills to play a guard position.
Yeah.
In the NBA, and he doesn't have those. I think he's the definition of a forward, in my opinion. I know he's young, but some of the problems that he has are issues that it needs time to work through, time that I don't know if the Rockets have. The refusal to play the role is like the biggest one, right? Like, you can't get minutes on a team that's trying to win games if you're playing for yourself and not for the team. And that's kind of been the Cam Whitmore experience so far, is he struggled at adapting to team basketball. This is not something that he struggled with just at the NBA level. He struggled with it in college. He struggled with it in the G League. He struggled with it in summer league. This is kind of just what he is. And like I said, he is young. So like I'm not saying he can't grow out of it, but he does struggle with it. And when you're a team that's trying to win games, you can't afford to give a guy like that minutes, because that hurts the team. And I think that's why Ime Udoka kept him at the rotation last year. When you struggle to move the basketball, when you struggle to make quick decisions with the ball in your hands, when you struggle to play defense, when you struggle to do the things that, you know what I'm saying, like that you got to do to get on the court, you're not going to play. Especially over, like, for example, Aaron Holiday, who isn't some super duper great guy, but Aaron Holiday can dribble, shoot, pass. Like those are things that he can do. And he's not a scrub defensively either. And so, like, when you're trying to win, you probably would opt to play the dribble, shoot, pass guy who defends over the guy who's a bit more developing. And I think he needs to go somewhere that'll allot him that development time, unless you're telling me that you have real reason to believe that this is the year where he buys into the role. And I think the fact that the Rockets are kind of willing to trade him kind of hints that they don't think he's going to do that. Or that he kind of, I mean, if I'm Cam Whitmore, I probably want to go to like the Wizards and go put up 20 shots anyway. So, yeah, that's why I just, like, for me, like, I don't know. And he didn't really play for us last year anyways. It's not a big loss to me in any capacity, in my opinion, but
that's currently where I stand. It's like, it would suck if you go somewhere and he's amazing, but I just don't see it working on this current team. I mean, Ime has a vision. He wasn't playing him last year. He gets all this depth this upcoming year. I don't expect that to necessarily change. That's just me personally. But yeah, Cam is 20. He's going to struggle. But it's probably going to have to be.
Like I said, it's not just the fact that he's going to struggle. It's that because I want to respond to that question. For us to let him fight through it, that means that a team that just signed, or not signed, but just traded for Kevin Durant is willing to punt away, like, opportunity to win games at the expense of Cam Whitmore. Because, like, and I don't want to do the hate Cam Whitmore thing, but the way he was playing was damaging. It was. If you're going to be the guy that tries to dunk on three guys, you know, all the time, or like I said, you're taking your step back threes and whatnot, and they're not going, like, when you're not playing team basketball, that hurts the team. That isn't like a situation where it's we're just existing with, no, like, it's making us worse. And so, like, no, I can't afford, especially with Kevin Durant. No, I can't afford for you to go out there and hurt the team. If you tell me you're gonna play a role, by all means, you know what I'm saying, because he has the athleticism, he has the shot making, he has the size. Like, by all means, like, we could use a guy like that. But that implies he wants to play that role. And, you know, maybe, like I said, maybe year 3 is the year where he wants to do it. But up until now, he has not wanted to do it. And like I said, if I'm Cam Whitmore, I'm 20 years old, I think I'm the best player in my draft class. I want to go to a team that's going to let me show I'm the best player in my draft class. I don't want to play a role for the Rockets. I want to go put up 20 shots on the Wizards. So that's why I'm just like, I think it's probably in the interest of everybody that this is probably, I think he's done. I think that he's going to get traded this summer.
I personally agree. Did y'all want to discuss anything else on the Cam Whitmore front?
Well, I got a question for all of you. Let's say they do trade Cam. You know, as Kelly mentioned today, they're going to work with him on finding a home. If that does happen, Kelly also just talked about today that it just depends, right? There's a lot of things that are still going to be worked out over the next few weeks and months. Yeah. But let's do the hypothetical that he gets traded. Then that 5 kind of like backcourt-ish players you can play in the backcourt shrinks to 4. All right. Amen, Reed, Fred,
Aaron Holiday.
Aaron Holiday. Who is a free agent addition or a young player? Like, who is a player the Rockets can bring in to be a part of that rotation, or at least be there as a depth piece that you think is still out there in free agency that could probably sign for the vet minimum? Who is somebody that interests you and who you think would be a good fit?
I'll say this, and he's been very injured, and I wish that wasn't the case. But if he wasn't as injured, he wouldn't be going for a vet minimum. I don't know what he's going to make, but Malcolm Brogdon, I'm sure Houston would have interest in. But again, he's just been extremely injured. I'd have to ask Kelly about that question. But I don't know what his market is. He hasn't been signed yet, but that would be the first name that comes to mind before I take a deeper look into the free agent class.
If he get, and this is for me, if he gets cleared of those charges, you got to call Malik Beasley. He gets cleared. You got to give him a call. You got to give him a call, man. Hey, it's all about prize picks, you know. So it's just depending on how it is. But like, I think, you know, for a minimum addition, you know, you want to probably bring in a shooter, maybe a Seth Curry. You might give a call to your good old friend Eric Gordon. You know, Rock fans probably hate hearing that name, but you know, just someone.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
Just someone of that ilk in terms of someone that has ball skills, going back to what Will talked about, being an actual true guard, being able to be a secondary, tertiary creator, and most importantly, provide floor spacing. These guys need shooters like desperately because you guys watched the last season. Like there was times where the reason why teams were so confident going zone was because they knew the Rockets weren't going to outshoot them out of the zone. And, if you're trying to combat that going into a year where you think that you are in the tier one of teams in the Western Conference and maybe the NBA, you want to have as many shooters as possible. So I think adding KD was good. Dorian was good as well. If you think that Reed is going to improve as a shooter, cool. Jabari, those guys, but you still need to go out and get you a true vet sniper. And I think if you can find that piece, obviously you're currently, I think they're at the apron right now, the first apron, so they're kind of hard cap, but if you waive Jock, you'll have some more wiggle room if you trade Cam as well.
Can I ask you a question about that actually?
Yeah.
Do you think, because like the Kobe White trade people keep talking about, or just any trade that is not us waiving Jock Landale and trading Cam Whitmore for picks.
Yeah.
That would put us in the first apron, right?
Well,
we're right at that line.
They're at the first apron right now. So anytime you use the mid-level, the non-taxpayer to bring somebody and you use more than the taxpayer amount, you are hard capped. So the way to get out from under that is obviously by not guaranteeing Jock's salary, which is $8 million, that will bring you under. If you were to trade Cam, obviously Nate Williams' contract is not guaranteed until opening night. I think it's like around 2.5. It's around like a minimum contract. So those three names specifically is how you can get from under the apron. So I think if Kobe's making 12 and you're sending out I
would say, do you think the Rockets would be comfortable staying in the first apron? That's gonna be my question.
I doubt it.
Because I don't think they would, because their whole thing has been being flexible from a cap perspective, because it's afforded them to be able to strike like now when the time is right. So I don't think that they want to be a first apron team, because they're still coming up. Like, it'll be one thing if they were a perennial conference finals team and getting, playing into May and June, then that's cool. But I think until you get to that point, you want to be as flexible as possible. And if there are easy ways to get out from under that, then they're going to do that.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like we probably won't see them make a move like that. Because I
don't think any trade. I don't think this is me. Hey, I don't think. I think it makes more sense for them to get a minimum guy just to keep things from a cap sheet, because you still have 11 guys that can play. Like, it's not like we're not talking about a thin roster. This is still a deep rotation. So whoever you're bringing in is probably not going to play that much anyway, because if you're bringing in a guy on day 3 or 4 of free agency that's 29 or 32 as a shooter, are you putting more stock into him, or are you trying to see what you have in Reed Shepherd, which was what I keep hearing time and time again? So it's like, in terms of your order of operations, I would rank Reed's playing time more than, seeing what you have in a veteran guy off the market who's there for a reason.
And I feel like what you just said is also part of why I think it's really difficult to see Cam Whitmore stay, because if you go chart out the minutes of the guys that we do have and do intend to play, it does not leave a lot of minutes. And like, I saw somebody say something about like, we can give him 13 minutes, but like, same thing. If you're Cam Whitmore, do you want 13 minutes a night? Like, are you cool with that being your reality, where you're not playing? You may not play that much. You might just be at 13. Like I said, if that's my reality, I might just rather go somewhere else. So, go ahead.
No, the thing you're talking about is also like he may not play because the Rockets may not need him to generate rim pressure. Like, with this whole conversation we're having about guards and these, like, having more playing time, is because we need people on the team who can generate rim pressure, get to the rim, create offense. But like, take a step back, like, go watch the Mind the Pod with Kevin Durant today. That was recorded before the trade. He's talking about mid-range, and he's like, I'm going to take the shot I'm good at because it's going to draw in the defense to me, and I can make a pass out. The ball's going to be in his hands. He's going to do that. You got to be able to make a shot. That's what Kelly's talking about. You got to be able to shoot the basketball. And it's like, it doesn't matter at that point who's the guard is, because KD's going to have the ball in his hands. If you're Alperen Şengün and you want to be somebody who is going, if as Kelly mentioned a couple of weeks ago, is going to be shooting a lot more from three and they're working on his shot, then he's going to be playing along the perimeter a lot more and maybe playing more high post offense and being a ball handler there. And so I think there are avenues for the Rockets to not necessarily have to play a fourth guard major minutes. And then that goes back to your point, Will. Is Cam going to be okay with not playing major minutes as a fourth guard? Because he's not going to get minutes over Reed. He's not going to get minutes over Amen, and he's not going to get minutes over Fred.
Or DFS at this point.
Again,
also they just signed that guy for that reason.
Yeah, it's about him buying into a role. And again, I don't know if Cam buys into a role. He can be a dynamic scorer. That's his game. Like, he wants to be a dynamic scorer. And he has that ability. He's 20. But 13 minutes a night doesn't really have the ability to, and he kind of has to force some action in that 13 minutes to really clear up some more minutes for him in the future. And that's not what Ime necessarily wants. Again, they had to sit this guy down multiple times throughout the year and say, hey, there's a reason you're not playing. We need you to do this, and this, and it didn't happen. So, again, it really goes back to Ali Khan's original question, like, what's the timeline? I think they do have young guys that fit this, group of, contenders, and I just don't think Cam necessarily fits at this current moment. And I'm not surprised, again, that they're trying to trade him. So, that's just me. I'm curious to see what they do with the two guard. They could probably stay and then just rock with Reed off the bench and Holiday. I don't know if they play both of them. They might. They played those two guards before at the same time. They have the size to do so. We've ran double big. They could probably go double big actually with Barry at the three. You get your two bigs and then you can go Fred and
go quadruple big now.
Yeah, they go quadruple big. They can go five. Yeah. I tweeted out the small ball lineup that you put, Kelly. I think Will was like, bro, that's not a small ball lineup. I think Amen at the one, and then the tallest guy is KD at 6'11". But yeah, that's a lineup. Yeah, they got versatility. But yeah, I do think Cam is ultimately the odd man out. But yeah, we have about 3 minutes left in this live. I'm looking at all questions in the chat for the panel up here. What do y'all,
I want to ask you guys, because obviously you've seen the news of what the Nuggets have done this summer as well.
Yeah.
If you're ranking Houston today, OKC is 1. Do you have Houston right under them, or do you see Denver as a better team? Like, how would you rank Houston in the Western Conference right now?
I'll kick it to one of y'all first.
I got Denver as 3.
I have us at 2. I have us over Denver still.
I do too. I have us at 2. Yeah.
I think OKC is obviously number 1. Respect to them. They're the champions. They're so young. They can still get better. And I think the Nuggets have had like the second best offseason behind us, depending upon how you look at what the Hawks did. But they've obviously had like one of the better off seasons with how they've, the Cam Johnson trade. They brought in brought back Bruce Brown. They brought in Tim Hardaway Jr. today. There's probably another move out there. I'm forgetting. Oh, the Valanciunas trade, which I have no idea whether the Kings did that.
Kings are crazy.
Yeah, like they've had a really great offseason. But I think I'm still going to take us over the Nuggets. Although I will say this, and I'll pass it off. I don't know if that reflects in the standings, because I'm a firm believer that there's examples of teams that are better than their record suggests because of like load management, injury, stuff like that. So I don't know if we're going to have a better record than Denver per se, but I think come playoff time, if we're healthy, I would take us over Denver in the playoff series.
I'll say this. I think Houston, again, with the depth that they added, they're winning 52 games last year.
Yeah.
And if you look at the on-off numbers, they got rid of their the rotation guys. They lost Dylan, they lost Jalen. Those two are at the bottom of their on-off stats. You bring in the people that they brought in, I think they win 60 games. I'm not going to lie. If they stay healthy, I think they could touch 60 wins. I don't even know if that's a hot take, but I see natural improvement from this young core. And you have the depth if Steve-O is sitting. I think they can still muscle out some wins if KD isn't out there. And I have a lot of stock in Amen Thompson. I know we all do. I think he can really take a crazy leap. I think they can win 60 games if they're healthy enough, and they have the depth if that health isn't there. So we'd have to see what happens in the playoffs. But yeah, I got Houston at 2. OKC probably wins like 65 again.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say this again. I brought that parallel up to start the show. Brad, that 60 games thing is possible if the parallel it comes true, where you make that trade like you did in 2018. You bring in Kevin Durant, like Chris Paul was here to help you.
Yep.
Got PJ Tucker, similar to how you bring in Dorian Finney-Smith with the mid-level exception. I mean, it certainly is a possibility. I think the biggest question mark for me, where I have the Nuggets over the Rockets is Nuggets have Nikola Jokic, and it's hard to beat Nikola Jokic 4 times in this series. And I'm talking, like as Will mentioned, not necessarily seeding, but from like a best team perspective in the playoffs. Hard to beat Nikola Jokic 4 times in this series. Which player do the Rockets have that makes it hard for you to beat the Rockets 4 times in this series? Now you can push back and say, well, it's more likely going to be a team aspect where our team is difficult, and that's why it's hard to beat them in a 4-game series. But that's just a question I think about a lot, especially the last few days. Is it the Nuggets because of Jokic? It's like that going to be when you think about 4 games? Do you trust the Nuggets and Jokic more, or do you trust the Rockets as a team more? And that's going to be the biggest question going into the season.
I trust Kevin Durant personally, but Jokic is by far the best player in the world. They're going to be leaning heavily on KD in the playoffs to get some buckets, and I do hope the natural leaps from Şengün, who again like 54.7 true shooting percentage last year. I need that to get back to around 58ish at the minimum, and then Amin Thompson I think takes a leap. But yeah, Houston again, they've built a team identity of getting every single rebound and locking up. And so to your point, I think it comes down to the team as a whole. I love the way they've constructed it, and that's what's necessarily going to get them to the top if that's what they want. And KD just adds to it again. They were missing a half-court scorer, and that's Kevin. So yeah, that's it for me. Do y'all have anything else y'all want to add? We're over the hour mark right now.
No, I'm
Read
good.
Kelly's article today.
Yes,
Appreciate
amazing
it.
article.
I think it's still crazy to even hear you say KD and Houston. It still doesn't make any sense like that. That's actually a thing now, which is crazy.
I got friends texting me middle of the night saying they're up watching Kevin Durant highlights because they're so excited that he's a Houston Rocket. I mean, I don't think I've like my friends have felt that way since when like Chris Paul was a Rocket. It's just been such a long time for where you feel like we talk about this when the trade happened. You remember where you were when that trade happened, right?
Yeah.
So it's still pretty crazy to me that you get to call Kevin Durant a Houston Rockets. So absolutely.
Yeah, it won't click for me until October 6th. I believe that's the first preseason game. That's not going to click until then. So yeah, they got KD. Yeah, I won't believe it until then. But as always, we thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. We're close to 1,000. We are now on Spotify, Apple, if that's where you want to listen to this kind of stuff. So tap in. Again, we're going to come back for episode 4 next week. We'll have some Summer League hoops to talk about very soon. That's coming up as well. So, yeah, once again, thank you guys for listening. We'll be back.
X's and O's videos coming soon.
Yes, it is.
Sure.
Yes, it is.